The cuckoo comes in April, she sings her song in May. In the month of June she changes her tune and then she flies away.
At the beginning of the day, the new light comes on quickly. No sooner do your eyes have a chance to adjust than the light has changed. But the light at the end of the day is another matter altogether. The sky becomes golden, and the cool shadows become longer. It happens slowly. Your eyes adjust and you begin to see more. Gradually, the sky deepens and the shadows become one as the remaining warm light bends over the hills and into the cooler hollows. Time seems to slow down. Farmers come home for the day. Meanders of turf smoke trickle up from the chimneys, and the night sounds begin. The work in this exhibition is mostly from several different farms in County Clare, in the west of Ireland. They are part of a larger series of paintings and photographs entitled Western Light. While several of my friends have already passed away, while I knew them, it was all too clear to me that they were people in the Western light of their own lives. They had lived most of their lives in the old way, by hand, until the tractor came into Ireland in the mid to late 1950s. Many of the older farmers continued to carve out their living in much the same way, from the land, until the beginning of the 21st century, and yet their children and grandchildren lived in a world of the new way, with computers, fast cars, built-in obsolescence, and not really part of a community as their parents and grandparents had, and often still did. Mary Nestor and Patty Mack lived within half a mile of each other. Patty's elder brother, Martin, passed away several years ago. Just before that happened, Martin acquired a cell phone, which he and his neighbor Mary had just learned how to use, although each of them was mostly deaf. Patty inherited the phone, but wasn't entirely sure how to use it. Neither Martin nor Mary had had indoor plumbing for most of their lives, and each had the use of only minimal electricity. Martin had 2 electric lamps at one point, while Mary, mother of 18, had 3. She passed in 1998 at the age of 87, and Martin at the age of 92 several years later. Patty lived out the last years of his life contentedly in a nursing home, enjoying for the first time in his 88 years what many others had had for most of their lives. I have come to see my paintings and photographs as portraits of friends, seen and understood through their artifacts, the farm implements, the wheelbarrows, the buckets, and the tools they used to carve out their living. These are people in the Western light of their lives. This is what I paint and photograph, and what I write about. These are people in the Western light of their own lives and the life they have come to share with me.
Oh, when I grew up here, I started school, when I was 6 years. I had to walk to Kilfenora, sure. I suppose it was nearly a mile or 2 miles to Kilfenora, wet weather and fine weather every day. I hardly ever missed a day from school. I was great for attending. I was no great scholar though. I wasn't a great scholar though. But I climbed the way through school. And then when I was about 14 years of age, our teacher died. And I was shifted then down to another school that was back the way down here, Gartown School. And I went there then for 2 years or 2 or 3 years more. I was shoving on to 17 years when I stopped home from school. A national school, it was all a national school. I wouldn't consider myself a great scholar though, just learning away. When I stopped home from school then, my father died the year I stayed home from school. And I had no outlook but to stay here, work on the farm, along with my brother then. Times were hard enough that time. Money was scarce that time. Money was scarce and money was very tough. But just after the economic war, we had the economic war, it was in 1933 or 34 when de Valera was elected. He held the rates from going to England, and England boycotted the cattle trade. And money was very scarce then up along until 1938 and 39, and money was, and then the war broke out. Oh, it was all excitement. So I heard then with a neighbour here then, with an old woman that was up here above. I heard in just before the war started. I hired in with her. My wages was £27 a year. She gave me I was getting top wages at 27. And the average worker around here, his wages would be about, we say, £17 a year, and he would have to work hard. But I had an easy time. I had on but to be herding cattle and knocking around. I put down about 6 years, fine and a good time, well fed. We enjoyed that life.
(1996). It was particularly dry in all of Ireland that summer, and hot too. Much of the grazing crop in Ballybreen had been used up, and the new growth was too short to harvest. Things were looking pretty desperate for the farmers. The water level was down, and water had to be rationed. Sometimes it would go off mid-morning for most of the day, and perhaps come back on in the evening for a few hours. We would fill the rain barrels and later load the pots, pans, and all of the kettles we would find and bring them into the house. I could only imagine what it was like for the farmers like Martin Mack, who had cattle to keep watered. I had heard about Martin from the very beginning of my time in Kilfenora. He had been described to me as the wise man on the hill ever since I had arrived. As I climbed the hill to his home, I had the feeling that I was going back in time, back to a time and place that felt comfortable and familiar. My knock on the door was answered by a muffled, gravelly "Come in." Martin was alone, sitting at the window end of the kitchen table when I first entered the dark, smoky room. He was wearing a bulky, rough-knit sweater and reading the newspaper through scratched, black-framed glasses, smoking his pipe. The window, clouded from years of turf and tobacco smoke, made gentle the late morning sunlight that filtered into the room. I guess Martin had heard enough about me to feel comfortable talking with me. He let me draw him as we talked. He spoke about growing up on the farm where he and all of his brothers and sisters had been born. I asked him what winters were like up there on the hill, as I imagined him watching the long, cold days trailing into a seemingly endless display of changing skies. Martin would come down from his farm on the evenings when we went into town to listen to music. At some point, he would arrive and just be there, sitting out on the wall, smoking his pipe, usually dressed for the evening, but often in just a tidied-up version of what he had been wearing to work the fields that day anyway. His trousers were cinched way in, with a belt that was more tied than buckled, since all of the holes were out of range. His jacket hung loosely on his wiry frame, and he would usually wear his well-worn hat. From inside the house we could smell his pipe smoke, and then hear him keeping the pipe alive with the occasional quiet gurgling draughts. Mary often called him in for some tea and a few queen cakes. It was one evening during the drought that the conversation drifted around to the water situation. Martin's shortage was even worse than that of most of the farmers, since there was rarely enough pressure to get the reservoir water all the way up to the hill to his farm, even when it was plentiful. His spring well was all but dry now, but he reminded Mary that her spring across the road had always run strong, even in the worst of times. At one time, in fact, the spring had even been piped under the road to the house before the new water mains passed by the house. That would have been all forgotten had it not been for Martin. Before we knew it, with a blue bucket and a length of rope in hand, Martin set off down the road to the overgrown break in the stone wall to examine the spring. As he disappeared into the thicket with me in tow, I became very anxious, remembering that the two old rotting boards crossed the muddy surrounds of the barely damp stream bed. They were about 12 feet long and very springy, each yielding gradually to the weight of Martin's steps, creaking to just short of collapse. At this hour, in the fading humid light, I could easily envision the worst. A missed step, a fall, a broken hip. But Martin was not to be dissuaded. I would never have known where to look for the spring, but Martin did. He went straight at the brambles, prying them back with a length of pipe, eventually revealing a heavy Lascana flagstone which he gently and gingerly slid aside, hat still in place, and pipe still issuing rivulets of smoke into the fading evening light. Again, undaunted, on his knees, he urged everything from his waist up into the mouth of the spring, rope and bucket first. It was difficult for me to understand the running commentary on the condition of things in the underground darkness from inside the well without benefit of gesture. Nonetheless, as strands of smoke passed between his jacket and the rim of the well, it was clear that Martin knew exactly what he was doing, even though he had not been to the well in over 10 years. Some minutes later, his stiff, arched upper body inched its way back out of the well, veiled in a thin cloud of pipe smoke. Hat still in place, followed by 3 gallons of beautiful, clear Ballybrain spring water. I had been wrong. The sagging and groaning boards carried both Martin and the added weight of the water, intact beyond their limits. Martin knew they would. He left the water to the side of Mary's front door without a word and returned to the wall pipe just now ready for a relight. I was only just now beginning to plumb the quiet depths of this man's wisdom. Pishog, or Pishrog, fairy enchantment. There are accounts dating back to the 1850s where people used to wash their cattle once a year in the bog and then put some butter back into the bog. That was Pishoggery. In the 18th and 19th centuries, locals began finding lost butter stores when they harvested peat, and they developed the superstition that butter should be placed in the bog. As for the word itself, pishog or pishrog, that refers to witchcraft or enchantment. If you said it was bad luck to come in and out of a house using the same door, someone would surely accuse you of believing in old pishrogs. Or, if the cow was not inclined to give milk, they believed someone had done pishrogs. If the cream didn't turn into butter after you dashed it in the churn, that was pishrogs too. And if a woman was seen skimming the top of water from a pond on your land, she was said to be doing pishogs, and it would have a bad effect on your cows.
No, when there was pishrogs involved in that too. There was pishrogs involved in that to milk. If you come into a house and they're making a churn, you'd have to do so many. Every man that a woman come in and you're mixing your churn or making your small churn, you had to wheel that. Otherwise shouldn't be lucky. And there'd be certain people that would come into your house and you're making the churn, and you'd be better off if they didn't come in, because they had pishrogs or something, because your butter wouldn't make. One time long ago, that cook, that berry outside in your garden, where you'll have your turnips or potatoes sown, at night, that put a dozen or 11 eggs boiled and put them into your drills. And then that put home cured bacon into your drills, where your potatoes would be sown. But you'd have no crop where that happened. You'd have to get the fryers then from Innis. The holy that had to come out, you'd have to get them to bless your garden and get the holy water blessed and sprayed over your garden. There were terrible pishrogs in some places long ago that could interfere with you. And then May morning, that had the old people that had all the twigs of the white thorn, and they'd be putting a bunch of white thorn at both sides of the entrance door. That was to prevent the pishrogs interfering. The white thorn, the black thorn would be, but the white blossoms would be on it. But the old people that have that picture break a day, and that have been stuck up under the thatch at both sides of the house to keep out this badness out of the house. All the old people.
I suppose my memories really would be mum and dad discussing that at home, or it being discussed with friends and stuff, and I could never understand how somebody would have that power that the cream wouldn't turn into butter in the separator or in the churn that they made the butter. And I suppose they spoke about people burying eggs, but I can't remember the reason why they buried the eggs. You could bury cloth, you could bury meat and bones. Bones was the one that, in my memory, was the worst because it came into the house. It was, it was going to have misfortune in the house. And that was the serious one. But I could never understand how people had that control, or how that control was there. And I suppose then my brother, his friend, encountered it because he bought a farm. And I suppose they didn't want him there. He wasn't wanted in this particular farm. And they got the priest from, we'll say, the friar in Ennis to come. And he said prayers and all the rest, and he asked the man to know, did he want to know who was doing it? And he said he didn't, but he said the smoke would whatever, the smoke would appear over the house of where the misfortune was coming, or where I suppose this person was, I don't know whether you'd call it evil, or I don't know, I'm not quite sure.
I heard of another man now, I'm just thinking of another man, he wouldn't be living too far from here at all now. He got up one morning and there was a plate, there was a big pan of meat outside his door. And what did he do but I suppose cut the pan of meat and throw it out, throw the one side and everything. But he went down to the priest and he told him his story. And the priest said to him, you're going to meet a bit of hard luck now, he said, but you'll get over it okay. That man, and he was known but a poor farmer, he buried 3 of the best cattle he had. They were all lost very silly. All over. The bad luck, the pan of meat was the sign of bad luck. But if he may consider himself and bring the pan of meat into the fire and burn it, they said would have no power. But he would cut it and threw it away and threw it out to the dogs. But they say if he brought it into the fire and burned it, he would have the power killed. Oh, one man told me one time he spotted another neighbour coming in and digging a little hole in the ground, and when he was gone, he went down to where he had the hole dug, and what did he find but a piece of meat buried in the ground.
A piece of what?
A bit of meat.
Oh, meat.
Bit of meat. And the man had pissorogs. The man had bad luck with a horse, and the horse died with him. And he wanted to throw the bad luck over to the neighbour. So the neighbour only but dug up the bit of meat, brought it into the fire and burned it. And the priest were over in Kilshanny one time, he was 50 years ago. He gave a big sermon anyhow about all the charms. He condemned everyone that he didn't want them coming into the chapel at all. He said they would work on all charms. He wanted to do away with them. That was okay anyhow. But the priest had a cow. And by God, this day the cow swallowed a spud and she was choking. And they went up and told the priest, what are we going to do? Your cow will choke. Will we go over to the man that has the charm to cure the cow, or what are we going to do? Well, he said, whatever you do, he said, don't let my cow die. So they had to go over and bring hither the man with the charm, and he had him condemned the Sunday before that.
Yeah, there was lots of different stories around fairies, but I suppose now looking back, I think every place was dark. There was no lights that time. So you could, if you were in the dark, you could make any shape out of anything, can't you? You know, you can really, like a tree can move, a certain way in the wind and you could make a face out of it. It's no more than the sky, you could make a face in the sky. But I remember one particular one, they used to say that this donkey and car, white, massive white donkey in this car, and it would run full gallop up along the field, and they used to dare each other to know who'd go this particular passage. And I remember when I was in that spot, and I remember looking thinking, I hope this donkey doesn't appear now or I'll run for my life. And then there was another place as well that it was in another direction, and Dad would have talked about it, and he would be fearless. I suppose in my eyes he was fearless. And they heard this noise, and the friend that was with him out, late at night, and he ran, and Dad stayed, and it ended up being a cow that was inside the wall that was making the noises. But he said if he didn't wait to check it out, he would always, in his believe that there was fairies, but he didn't believe them.